Today is May 1st. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It's a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today, we're changing things up a little bit, just a tad. To be honest with you, I've been building the airplane while flying it, so, this is something I kind of wanted to add. I was going to wait till the second go around before I did this, but just missed the core text so much, I figured I'd do it today. So what we're going to do from now till July 1st is I'm going to be reading a little bit of the first 164 pages, and then I'll go back to the personal stories and just continue where we left off yesterday, and the traditions as well. That's kind of what we're doing today. So today we're going to be reading out of the core text. We'll begin with Chapter 3, More About Alcoholism, pages 30 through 32. The personal stories, part 2, They Stopped in Time, story number 10, Tightrope. We're going to continue pages 362 through 365. And out of the 12 and 12, we're going to continue our journey through tradition number 1 by reading page 130 and part of 131 today. So with all that, I hope you're doing well this morning. Life is good over here. We've been given a brand new set of 24 hours, and it's up to us who we decide to be today. Always an exciting opportunity when we're given another day. So with that, my friends, let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. All right, my friends, so I figured I'd go ahead and start off with More About Alcoholism, Chapter 3, and we'll just work this way all the way up to page 164 of the core text. That way, I think it's only about 2 or 3 extra pages a day that we'll be reading, leading up to July 1st, and then we'll just start it all over again. So here we go. This is Chapter 3, More About Alcoholism. Most of us have been unwilling to admit that we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think that he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove that we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently may be, has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. We are like men who have lost their legs. They never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there has been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree that there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. Despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe that they are in that class. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. If anyone is showing inability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. Heaven knows we've tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people. Here are some of the methods we have tried. Drinking beer only, limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking only at home, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever, with and without a solemn oath, taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums, accepting voluntary commitment to asylums, We could increase the list ad infinitum. We do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself. Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. It will not take long for you to decide if you're honest with yourself about it. It may be worth a bad case of jitters if you get a full knowledge of your condition. All right, my friends, we'll stop here out of the core text. We'll come back to this in a minute. Let's jump over to the personal stories. And we are continuing our story, story number 10 for those who stopped in time. And our friend's certainly becoming unmanageable here. His drinking is. He's blacking out more. He's actually shutting himself up in his bedroom because he knows he's most likely going to black out. And the only time he ever ventures out is when he miscalculates and runs out of alcohol, which is extremely dangerous because he hops in a car either in or right out of a blackout and still intoxicated. So definitely dangerous living here, and his life is becoming unmanageable. And we're going to continue on pages 363 through 365. I found it increasingly difficult to do anything more than work and drink. I was afraid to use public transportation or even walk on the streets. My stomach was constantly upset, and my doctor had diagnosed a number of intestinal disorders. Even though I rarely drank away from home, my body was covered with bruises because I often fell down during blackouts. I never wore short-sleeved shirts, even in the summer, because people would ask me about the bruises. One morning, I awoke with a numb leg and found that I had somehow ruptured 2 spinal discs while in a blackout at home. For the last 4 years, I lived alone in a small house. The ceiling of one room had collapsed. The plaster dust was everywhere, coating the garbage and newspapers that littered the floor. Empty food cartons, beer cans, bottles, and dirty clothes lay where they were tossed. I'd gotten a cat because the mice were out of control, but I was not conscientious about cleaning up after the cat. It is not surprising that I had few visitors and neighbors tended to avoid me. The last few months were filled with fear and self-pity. I began to contemplate suicide with increasing regularity, yet I was afraid of dying. I remember thinking that this life would go on, never getting better and slowly fading away to nothing. Then I began to hear the whispers. I became convinced that there were people living in my house. I couldn't see them, except for the occasional glimpses out of the corner of my eyes, and so I concluded that they were small and somehow living in the walls or under the stairs. I hear them plotting to kill me. There were nights when I went to bed with a knife in my hand to protect myself. Other nights, I locked myself in the bathroom so they couldn't get me. One night, I left a shot of vodka on the mantelpiece so that they'd go after that and leave me alone. Then, a miracle occurred. An evening came when I decided to have one drink outside and then go straight home. I had that drink and left for my house. The next thing I remember is waking up the next morning with a stranger I had picked up in a bar. Apparently, I had gone out on autopilot and, in a blackout resulting from just one drink, had gone on a tear. The look of disgust and pity on the face of that stranger was the jolt that I needed. I suddenly realized that my life was totally insane, that my drinking was out of control, and that I was either an alcoholic or a candidate for committal to the local asylum. Not wanting to be locked up, I decided to try Alcoholics Anonymous. I called my former lover, and he put me in contact with an individual who took me to my first meeting. Although I can barely recall anything about that meeting, I heard 2 things that I'd never forgotten. The first was, "You don't have to drink again." This was a total revelation to me. For a long time, I had believed that alcohol was one of the few positive things left in my life. I looked forward to my first drink every evening, and the thought that alcohol was holding my life together. I had to drink to survive, let alone have any comfort. Yet here, people who had been in the same boat were telling me that I didn't have to drink. I don't think I believed them that night, but it gave me enough hope to avoid drinking for the rest of the day. The second thing I heard was, "You don't have to be alone anymore." This too was a revelation. For years, I have rejected or been rejected by friends, lovers, family, and God. I was alone and afraid. My life had narrowed to work and the bottle. And work remained in the picture only because it was necessary to enable me to buy the bottle. The isolation and loneliness that alcoholism brought weighed heavily on me, and those words lifted an immense burden of fear. Again, I'm not sure that I completely believed, but I felt hope for the first time in years. Okay, some great stuff here. We'll come back to this in just a minute. All right, my friends. So out of the 12 and 12, we have been continuing our journey through tradition number 1, which is our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. I love the last line from yesterday's reading. It says, he learns that the clamor of desires and ambitions within him must be silenced whenever these could damage the group. It becomes plain that the group must survive or the individual will not. Once again, putting the principles before personalities. So we're going to read the next paragraph of page 130. So at the outset, how best to live and work together as groups became the prime question. In the world about us, we saw personalities destroying whole peoples. The struggle for wealth, power, and prestige was tearing humanity apart as never before. If strong people were stalemated in the search for peace and harmony, what was to become of our erratic band of alcoholics? As we had once struggled and prayed for individual recovery, just so earnestly did we commence the quest for the principles through which AA itself might survive. On anvils of experience, the structure of our society was hammered out. All right. So first of all, going back to the core text, oh man, how many times have I tried to control my drinking? I always love all those examples there of hiding it, only drinking throughout the evenings or, whatever it might be. But sooner or later, buddy, I did finally have to realize the hard way that I was an alcoholic. But hearing, the funny stories of what people tried to do to manage it beforehand, I always nod my head and go, yep, that was me too. It makes me feel better that I wasn't alone. And speaking of loneliness, we see that our friend here is extremely isolated. I mean, he's literally hearing voices, or he thinks he's hearing voices in the walls. These little people are out to get him. I mean, this is a severe hallucination right here. And obviously his home is falling apart. And he knows it, yet he's still continuing to work just enough to buy another drink. Talk about unmanageable. But finally he gets plugged into AA. And he hears, 1, he never has to drink again, which is a shock to him. And 2, he never has to be alone again. Which again is a shock to him because he's lived in isolation. And at the very least, if he continues to go to AA, he'll have the fellowship of men and women who think just like he does about alcohol. That in itself is amazing. But I think for me, in addition to the fellowship, I had a much, much deeper relationship with my higher power after I did the steps. It's something I strive for every day. I am so grateful to be sober today. And if you are sober today, you are a miracle. You are a miracle. And those who love you are very proud of you. I don't speak on behalf of AA, NA, Al-Anon, any other sect or denomination. I am just a friend in recovery, a grateful recovering alcoholic, and it's just a thrill to be sober today. We've getting a brand new set of 24 hours, and again, it's up to us today who we decide to be. If we're given another set of 24 hours, I'd sincerely look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.